Hello. Thank you for dialing into our webinar this afternoon. We're going to give it some time till a few other people join us. Hello, Sue Telespo. Thank you for saying hello. Okay, we are going to formally start this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Elham Shirazi, and I am the lead consultant for a program called WorkSmart that is funded by King County Metro. And at first, I want to just go over some housekeeping information with you. Okay, so as you've noticed, everybody is muted. As you have questions that come up, please do enter them in the Q&A box, which you can see either at the top or at the bottom of your screen. The webinar will be recorded and shared with all the registrants. We will also place the webinar on the King County website, and that is kingcounty.gov/worksmart in a few days. And please, at the end of this webinar, you will be receiving a survey. Kindly fill it out and return it, because we really value your feedback about the job that we're doing. So what is WorkSmart? WorkSmart is a free service, as I mentioned, that is offered by King County Metro to receive consulting services. And we estimate that the cost of the consulting, again, based on how comprehensive it is, it can range from 10 to 20,000. And obviously, as you know, one of the reasons King County Metro is funding this project is because we want to reduce traffic congestion, we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and possibly real estate costs for your business and productivity improvements as well. So, teleworking has been long studied. I tumbled my way into the business of teleworking over 30 years ago, but I want to share with you that really it's been studied for over 40 years, and there is a lot of information. And in the past year, as a result of COVID-19, we have information on a lot of the regions in the country, including the Metro Seattle region. WorkSmart we started an effort in the Metro Seattle region back in 2009, and eventually came up with the name WorkSmart, probably in 2010 or 2011. And, throughout these years, we've worked with over 100 employers in the region. I have been the lead consultant for WorkSmart for some time, and we have a lot of experience on our team, whether it's from a program implementation or a technology perspective, on developing not only customized telework programs, but also alternative work arrangement programs. We have lots of resource materials on our website. We do training, and we're also available to you for conducting evaluations. But I will complete a much better description of what we do towards the end of the webinar. So where is Seattle among teleworking regions? This data is actually not bad at all. It's pretty new. It was compiled in August, and it is based on the new Household Pulse Survey, which was conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau. And as you can see, Seattle is right up there as number 4. And if you look further above, the reason DC has probably the highest percentage of teleworkers is because there are a lot of federal agencies in DC, and they have been teleworking for about 20 years. And as you can imagine, Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, you all have a lot of high tech and emerging businesses that lend themselves very easily to teleworking. And when we talk about Metro Seattle, we are talking about King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. And so about half of the adults have switched to teleworking because of the pandemic. That's a lot of people who are teleworking. But keep in mind that there's the other half who are not able to telework either because their jobs don't lend themselves to teleworking, or just because they can't, or there are also people who are, businesses have shut down. Now, if you're wondering who's teleworking in Seattle, it seems to be that it's an equal percentage of male and female. However, the data does point that typically people with a four-year college degree are much more able to teleworking. Of them, 69% are teleworking versus those versus 26% of those with a high school degree or less. And obviously, I think that that kind of data is pretty obvious, because typically we see, a lot of white collar employees who are teleworking, and the household income for that group is relatively higher than, of course, those who are making less than 50,000. As you can see, among those with a household income of 150,000 or more, 80% are now teleworking. Okay, so let's talk about the timeline. I think, as we all know, we were kind of thrown into work from home, and I really do differentiate between work from home and teleworking, in that work from home for many employers has been a situation where there are no rules, there are no guidelines. People were sent home to work with no thought, pre-thought at least, in terms of equipment, connectivity, and a lot of organizations have just piecemealed it together. Teleworking is really about having a very thoughtful process in place, where there are eligibility criteria, there's selection criteria for jobs, and there are some other rules. We're making sure that none of the legalities about working from home are being violated. And I just want to put a plug for WorkSmart here, just to mention to you that we can definitely help you develop a sound telework program and graduate you from working from home to teleworking. What we have found is that, around August or September of last year, a lot of companies started announcing that July is the next January for opening. And actually, when this data was compiled, the vaccine had not been, the information about the vaccine being available was not being broadcast. So at that point, a lot of organizations, from Ford, as you can imagine, manufacturing, to Microsoft, started extending their date of beginning, coming back to the work site, and that may not be for everyone, through next summer. And Google was the first to announce that July 2021 was its return to office date. Uber, Slack, and Airbnb pretty soon jumped on the bandwagon, and then Microsoft, Target, New York Times also said that they were postponing the return of in-person work to the summer. I like this quote from Google's chief executive, which, he said, "I hope this will offer the flexibility you need to balance work with taking care of yourselves and your loved ones over the next 12 months. And as we know, we're still, there's still a lot of discussion about when that return will take place. Obviously vaccination has gotten underway, but that's primarily for healthcare givers, some people who are first line, responders. And in some of our regions, it's hitting 75 or above. But I'm actually based in California, and I noticed that my healthcare provider is right now just providing it to 85 plus. So there is, it varies where you are in terms of what the rollout is. Now, Microsoft actually, what they have been talking about based on their teleworking is that they're going to be embracing a flexible workplace. And the way they define that flexible workplace is that there is going to be some elements that will be different from every individual. So one of them is going to be the physical place where you work, be it the office, be it a center, be it home, be it at a co-working site, or mobile. And the other level of flexibility is around work hours. So, it's about when the workday starts, when does it end, and, is it full, is it part-time? And the third level is the work location, because as a result of teleworking, a lot of businesses have discovered that, maybe they can hire completely remotely, or there's some employees who have already moved away, because of, living in, high cost areas to some other parts of the country, that this is a way to keep them still employed and not lose, the knowledge and, the time that they've invested in those employees. So there's a flexibility of work site, work hours, and work location. Now, as far as attitudes towards returning to the office, this survey was conducted by Korn Ferry. By the way, the citations for every slide are at the bottom, and sometimes you can even get to the study by just clicking on it. So when asked, Korn Ferry asked this question of about 1,300 professionals in September, are you afraid to go back to the office when it reopens? And the most popular answer actually was no and somewhat likely. And that was, 70% of the respondents that said that they're not afraid to go back. And only, about very, very small percentage says that they were scared, which shows that they are trusting their employer to probably develop a safe office workplace with social distancing, with making sure that, it's, people are not congregating in, conference rooms or in any area, and they have a few new rules when people come in. Now, the second question that they were asked is, if your office is still closed, how likely is it that you will go back when it reopens? A lot of people do want to go back, and over 40% said that they do, but this doesn't mean that they want to go back full-time. And a good percentage, about 30%, said that they're somewhat likely, and then a few people, definitely over 20%, said that they're not likely to go back. In fact, some of the data I have probably on the next slide shows that 30% of some of these employees have already started discussions with their employers about being full-time. Now, another question that was asked by the Korn Ferry survey was, how confident are you that your colleagues will follow safety guidelines? And, if you look at this, again, about over close to 40% thought that their colleagues would be likely, and an equal amount thought that they wouldn't be likely. So that's kind of interesting. As far as productivity, and this was also again with the Korn Ferry survey, when asked if you were more productive from home, even if there were distractions such as a spouse or child at home, or from the office. And they felt that they were more productive at home despite some of the disruptions that we have because of COVID-19, meaning that there are others in the household that are either working or, doing, going to virtual school, or needing to be homeschooled, or, childcare age children. And they thought that, compared to the office, there were a good about 17% more productive at home in the current environment. Cisco Systems also did a survey, and 9 out of 10 of their employees said they wanted more flexibility and autonomy over where and when they work. And moving on, this is data from Cisco as from a survey of hybrid workplaces, whereby they compiled not only information from executives, but also from employees and knowledge workers. And as far as some of the data coming in from the executives, it looks like they're anticipating 60% of the workforce teleworking, um, about 2 days a week, every week, and which is about 8 days a month. So obviously, it seems like that is the hybrid situation that a lot of the media and everyone's been talking about, which ends up being the ratio of 3 to 2, either on-site or off-site. And I just want to remind everyone that there's nothing that says everybody has to be hybrid. Some people may even telework one day or no days. Some people may telework full-time. So please don't, get stuck in the thinking that it has to be, 3 to 2 ratio. Everybody seems to agree that a lot of the meetings post-COVID will have to be virtual, because there will be people from home or from other, regions. And as we know, it's probably not going to be safe, post-COVID yet for all of us to get into one meeting room. And an equal number share frustrations with video meetings. And we'll talk about frustrations with video meetings later in this presentation, as we talk about a little bit of the fatigue that we're all having from these virtual meetings. Now, as far as employees, employees do want to feel safer when they go back to work. And a lot of the employees are saying that their companies are making a lot of changes to the workplace, anything from physical changes to, even opening up only a percentage of the office space little by little. And obviously, technology is a huge enabler for providing the safer work environment. 77% of larger organizations will increase worker flexibility, and about 50 of them think that they're going to shrink their office spaces, because if not everybody's in the office every day, then there might be some abilities to share the office space and not take on as much in terms of real estate infrastructure. Employees are also citing frustrations with in-office experiences, and they're looking for intelligent workplace technology to improve work environments, and probably a lot of touchless systems, if that is feasible. And I can share with you that some of those changes are also very prevalent with smaller organizations. They're not that different. And actually, smaller organizations may have leases that are easier to sublease or to change, given what they've learned from this environment. FlexJobs does an excellent job of having employees in their database that are remote, and highly recommend going to their to their website. They have a lot of data, and they also come in with productivity being a little bit higher from home during COVID, and 95% of respondents from their remote database say that teleworking has resulted in either the same amount of productivity or a little bit of an increase. So that's the good news. We're not hearing a lot back about how productivity has gone down. Now, some of the reasons, obviously, that we've seen these increases in productivity are fewer interruptions. As we all know, there are not as many meetings to go to. Of course, we've been very good at replacing face-to-face meeting with virtual meetings, but they have more focused time, a quieter work environment. There's nobody around them talking, nobody in an open environment. They have a more comfortable workplace, and they also avoid office politics. So, this improved productivity may explain why 61% of workers view that, they're more productive when they work at home. Many of the respondents also said that their personal lives had improved while working at home. And a lot of the respondents did talk about how the lack of commuting, which again, I think is really understandable, no matter where you are from. If you're in the U.S., people spend a lot of times in their car, but the lack of commuting and the lack of commuting costs are definitely playing a factor in their personal lives. And 36% of the respondents in the Flex Job Survey said they had the round trip commute of 2 hours or more, which really means that for a lot of people, that extra time that they have found in their day makes them happier, more productive, and also they also have a better work-life balance. Very interesting that one of the positives that we're picking up from every survey nationally is that people are enjoying spending more time with their family and children. They're enjoying spending more time with their partners and the ability to take care of their pets. But it's very interesting that, also a lot of, men are saying that now they can, partake in raising of their children, as to before, maybe they missed out on a little bit more of that. A lot of the employees who are remote workers do want to become full-time. However, that does not mean that they will, of course, get that because it's dependent on the employee. And 31% would prefer a hybrid work arrangement. Just remember that word hybrid. I think it's going to stay with us for a long time. Although people do enjoy working at home, there are a lot of people who miss their, coworkers and who also miss the interaction of in the office. And as I mentioned before, a lot of people who are right now, working from home are asking permission if they can continue their remote work, arrangement post-COVID. And some employees, I don't want to say that this goes across the board and, if you're an employee, start thinking about it, but some employees are willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to be able to work from home as much as they want. There are people who miss the office, and that's a good half of those surveyed. I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. And about 15% say they miss the water cooler chats. And as we know, that's where a lot of the serendipity in the office happens, where we brainstorm and think about, different ideas. And we also see people in different departments. But there are also some people that are feeling lonely. In fact, a lot of surveys are showing that millennials have a little bit of difficulty navigating in this space. And that's probably because a lot of them are single. They like going to the office because it's, creates somewhat of a social environment. But, people who are alone have a very hard time, who live alone are having a harder time with working from home. Some people, just said that they're distracted, wasn't a large percent. But there are also around, 10% that are worried about the impact on their career, which really talks to that, to the concept that if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And hopefully with hybrid schedules, this will not be happening. But it does really mean that post-COVID, we have to really look at productivity and, where people are coming in, and where their efficiencies are as we, consider them for going up the ladder. And some people are finding it hard to unplug, and we'll talk about that as well in a few slides down. Close to 40% said that they miss nothing about the office. I'm sure that'll surprise some of you, but not all of you. And 4% would prefer to return to the traditional office full-time. As you can see, these numbers are all over the place, but I think the point that they're all making is that there are a lot more people who want to work from home to a greater degree, and who are probably looking towards more flexibility. Now, being that you are in the metro, Seattle region, and this kind of data would not be as effective for those of us in California, but some of you may have, some of your employees may be having issues with seasonal affective disorder. That is something that impacts about 5% of adults in the US, according to American Psychiatric Association. It's probably most prevalent in the fall and winter months, where we have shorter days, less sunshine, and cold weather. And it, forces people indoors as opposed to outdoors. And we know how much you like your outdoors, there in the state of Washington. And the Mayo Clinic says that, if you're likely to get them, it will start in the fall and kind of tap into the winter months and sap your energy. And, you may start feeling a little moody. Now, what are some of the good things about teleworking or working from home in relationship to SAD? Are that working remotely may allow you flexibility with your schedule. So, if your employees can have that flexibility, they may be able to start when it's lighter, and end their workday maybe when it's still not dark outside. And obviously, these kinds of arrangements have to be made on an employee with their an employee and a supervisor basis as to what fits their work. But this may be a really good savior. And obviously, those unhealthy office snacks are away. It's good to eat nutritious foods. And you may be able to add a light box to your home office, when that may not be a possibility at work. And, so it might make a better winter as long as you stick to a consistent routine. I apologize that some of this is small, but this is also because at the end of this session, not right at the end, but very soon you will get access to the recording. So you can, take your time as you read some of this. But, what is being recommended is that you turn your lights on, first thing in the morning, and try to have a really good routine schedule during, maybe fall and winter, or even just during winter. And, the lack of natural light is one of the contributors to SAD. I don't want to belabor this point because it may not be something that everyone's getting. And exposure to artificial lamps can be just as beneficial. So you may have to increase some of, the lighting. Find a way to be comfortable outdoors. Obviously, you're going to navigate more to being indoors because it's cold, but, get excited about your winter gear. If you have access to, outdoor space, consider an outdoor heater, maybe, or blankets. And I noticed that some of you are asking questions. Please wait. And at the end of this session, we will definitely pick up your questions. Also prep your indoors, because if you're going to be spending more time inside, then make sure it is kind of refashioned or has a better look to it to suit you. And obviously exercising is very important, as you know, because it increases endorphins and serotonin. And this last tip comes up quite a bit in that we're seeing that it's really important that you have a hobby and outside of working, whether it's baking, crossword puzzles, it's playing music, but it really helps to have a hobby that help you be balanced when the winter months here. Another survey that FlexJobs partnered with the Mental Health America survey, and they checked on the well-being of 1,500 respondents to see how people are doing, while they're working at home, not necessarily because of SAD, but what obviously the survey showed is what we expected, that employees who had poor mental health before the pandemic were 3 times more likely to have more mental health after the pandemic. And obviously the reasons that stress is higher are other things. They're not necessarily working from home, but they are tied to COVID-19, finances, current events, concern over families' health, the economy, and job responsibilities. And, half of the employees are saying that they have emotional support when they need it at work. But, the other half think that maybe it's not there. and it could help with them having access to it, maybe even if it's through websites. For half of the respondents, having flexibility in their workday was cited as one of the best ways that their workplace could better support them. So it's not just working from home, but being able maybe to start later, end later, or start sooner and end sooner. And probably this ties in very closely with having to provide that childcare, take care of young adults at home. And also, some of the other ideas that came up to the top of the list were encouraging time off. People are not taking time off because they don't want to take their vacation days, but it's highly, highly encouraged that they do, because even if they don't go anywhere, just the ability to be able to unplug is very important, or having mental health days. And about 30% felt that increased personal time off and better health insurance were the next best ways to support them. Now, McKinsey collects data all the time on what's happening during the pandemic and the impacts of remote work. And some of the trends that we thought that might be interesting for you to know is that women feel more stressed than men do, and especially mothers. As you can see, here, about 30% of fathers felt, stressed, and 40% of women. And then when you compare that, just a little bit above 40% of senior level management men felt stress, the pressure to work more. And look at how much more of a stress factor it is for women, close to 50%. And, one of the reasons that we're seeing this, obviously, is that women may be more likely to be in those, categories where they have been providing, childcare traditionally. So for them, their time is being cut quite dramatically. And also what we're noticing is that some women are considering downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce, if some of this continues. And if you, look at, the stress levels within Black men and Black women, it very nicely correlates with their almost with their white counterparts. A lot of people are exhausted, and women are exhausted. Now, as far as parents' roles, I definitely believe that there's we all know there's a tie between schools opening and employees being able to even go, back to the workplace for a few days a week. And unless schools open, this cannot probably happen routinely. And we know of schools opening and closing and opening and closing. So unfortunately, this is a trend we're going to live with. Even in Europe, where they were very consistent about keeping schools open, they finally shut them down close to the holidays. So when we ask, again, parents, if they have to modify their work routine to adapt to caregiving responsibilities, as you can see, 71% of women compared to 65% of men. And again, I work outside of core hours to balance other family responsibilities, 61% of women to 55% of men. I think these trends are showing up just the way we would imagine, but it's nice to see the numbers and to be cognizant of them. Now, what some employers are doing is providing a stipend for people who are remote. And this is really a trend that I would say is kind of new to a lot of employers. And we may see some of this change and increase in the coming years, but it's good to be mindful of it, because a remote work stipend can be used obviously two ways. One is to maybe purchase office equipment. A lot of people started teleworking without the right desk, without the right chair, and a nice ergonomic setup at home. And that cannot be conducive to efficiency. You really want them to be ergonomic and pay attention to details. It could also pay for maybe working at a co-working center if there's one in your area. Obviously, some of those have shut down, but there are a lot of co-working centers in the state of Washington and in the Metro Seattle region. I think I counted something like 30 of them at some point. Um, Maybe they want, they can use it to, people miss the free coffee in the office, believe it or not. I mean, they do get kind of focused on those things. So maybe it can be used for coffee, or it can be a one-time equipment stipend, if they need to upgrade something or get a second monitor. Second monitors are also emerging as something a lot of people are asking for. And then, they can be general stipends that people on site usually get, such as access to food, health and wellness, like a gym, or learning and taking, development type of classes. So you do want to broaden your perspective as to how you think about this if some of your employees are hybrid, so that, they can take advantage of this. And stipends can be given out on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis. It could be even a one-time donation, and it could be taxable or non-taxable based on the employer or the employees. Obviously, there are many ways to do this. Let me move forward. I have a few examples here. This is an example. These are live, real firms. Webflow, they have a 70% remote team globally. What they provide is $250 a month for remote workers, $200 a month for everybody, whether they're in the office or remote, for health and wellness, and $1,000 for, it could be attending conferences or just taking classes that they need to improve their skills. Another example, this is a fully remote firm. They're being very generous. $100 a month co-working space stipend, $100 a month fitness, $100 a month massage. And now that's very creative. And $1,000 continuing education, and then $1,000 a year matching charitable gifts stipend. Now, again, you may be a small employer, you may not have, as much. I would really, at a minimum, consider maybe a, once a month, once a year type of a stipend, so that if people need to improve, their desk, so that it's, it is a solid space. It's not the kitchen table, getting a good ergonomic chair, fixing their lighting, or getting, a better, maybe better equipment. Obviously the larger firms, have more. And remember, if you are saving on space, some of these, activities will become a lot easier, because you're going to see a lot of savings from real estate. Now, I'm not at all encouraging, emptying of downtown spaces, because they do serve a function. People still need to meet. We still will need offices. And for some people, it may be the only place that they can work. So a lot of firms are noticing that their employees are getting a little bit tired. And the data, some of the data comes from Blind, which is an anonymous workplace community app. And more than 3,000 employees have been surveyed from 40 companies. Some of the Seattle area tech giants were in the database. And, for some companies, their levels of burnout from working from home were higher than others. I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but as you can see, Amazon, Microsoft, and T-Mobile did stand out. And it really does, beg the question as to whether or not employers should be telling employees take some time off, and hopefully a lot of them did over the holidays. And people obviously are doing a lot at home. So that can also get a little bit tiring. So what are the red flag warnings? One of them is, and again, you may want to share these with your employees, is avoiding work. Another one is declining performance, which a manager should right away get on top of it with their employee. Another one is just being tired or apathetic. And then another, red flag warning is the inability to disconnect. So if you're seeing your employees work long hours, that might be a problem too, and it will eventually result in burnout. So, some tips for that, and again, this could be shared with your employees, set some office hours. Some employees may want to designate blocks of time, obviously with agreement from their manager, that maybe that's a time during which they're not available. It's their non-business available time. So, it might be even that it's for business and they're using the time to concentrate. I think I've made the point about taking time off, and it's something that you probably will want to do, again, in the next, 6 to 8 months. Having a hobby also comes up. This is a study from Forbes now, that, we can't just be passionate about work. There has to be other parts of our personality, outside our family and children, that if we can find even a little bit of time to, dedicate to. Some employers don't want to put up the second comment, which is update your job description. But, I think it's a good idea sometimes for workers to also discuss with their supervisors what they like about their current role, what are some other things that they could be doing, maybe how can they improve to be doing some better, some other types of activities. And if somebody's feeling, a little bit sad or lonely, it's really good not to hide those concerns. So when you are meeting with your employees doing, engagement, obviously we have to do still employee engagement, whether it's, through that happy hour or coffee or, whatever it is during work or after work. It's good for people to speak about it. And then other people chime in and give them tips. Other thing that we are finding is that not only Zoom, but any kind of, virtual, interaction is becoming a little bit tedious, and it's really not good to spend all day long on virtual meetings. And the reason that they are a little bit draining is because they make us focus a little bit more intensely on conversations, but also video, calls make it easier to look focused. You can also hide yourself, and be doing something else, and multitasking, which isn't always the best use of energy. Also, the way we process information over the video is different, because sometimes we feel like we, have to show attention by looking at, at the camera. And, being online with a lot of people makes it hard to sometimes pick up some of those, signals or processing visual cues, as it's written here, from other people about what they're feeling about what is being said. When you're in a room, you can do that quickly. So 2 techniques. I'm going to be brief because we do need to finish soon. Take a few moments before a virtual meeting to click start. Definitely, take a few minutes to think about the agenda. When you get on the meeting, greet people, reduce on-screen stimuli, choose speaker view if you're seeing yourself is a little bit disturbing, because some people just don't like to see themselves when they're speaking. And as I said, don't multitask, and make virtual social events opt-in. Not everybody likes to get on a social event. So as long as you have huddles and get-togethers for business reasons, that should be fine. Phone calls. A lot of people think that the phone is dying breed. I actually think that it's really better to sometimes switch to phone calls, especially when you don't know someone. It's a little bit more relaxing. After you get to know someone, video is a little bit easier. Always have an itinerary, make sure that you have the right setup, and just know that we're going to navigate out of this space. Here are some ideas to boost morale and collaboration. If you aren't doing these, do use them. You know, people do need these types of occasions to get together, to vent, to share. It gets very lonely, even for a small organization. So next thoughtful steps for any organization, I would say, are to think along two types of guidelines. One of them is to, hopefully you will work with us through WorkSmart to develop formal standards for teleworking post-pandemic. The more the rules of engagement are known by the employee, by the supervisor, by the organization, the easier it gets to answer questions. So do navigate in a direction where you're trying to make it a more formalized program, but also a lot of companies are looking at a return to the workplace guidelines. These should not be mistaken with your standards for teleworking, because that return to workplace guidelines are often physical, and the rules that you will have in place for bringing people back to the workplace, be it some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time. And we talked about the future being hybrid. Do consider stipends, especially for the acquisition of, furniture, because that's something that we've done well with catching up on technology, but not on, trying to set up some, giving people tools that their homes can be ergonomic. Not everyone wants to be remote all the time. And a one size fits all will not accommodate every employee in the future, or every employer. If hoteling makes sense, which really talks to sharing space, because not everyone's going to be there at the same time. I know that a lot of you today are joining us from WashDOT, and some of you are definitely going towards hoteling. And just keep this perspective that if we've gone this far in terms of working from home, become a solution and something that can work, let's think about sustainability, not only in terms of how we can be productive in this new environment, but also, from an environmental perspective, such as cutting back on trips, not needing as much office space, generating less greenhouse emissions, and, many more. So here are our services. We would work with you one-on-one to lead you through every step on the survey that you'll get pretty soon. Please do indicate if you want us to contact you, and we'll develop a customized program for you. We've developed with some of the firms already. One of the law firms we recently worked for, in the Metro Seattle region, we actually were able to compile a lot of case studies for, we're working with WashDOT and T-Mobile and some of the other firms. We have a lot of materials that will make it easy for you in the adoption of policies, procedures, and we also help in training managers and employees so that they can be successful, and we can conduct evaluation of work from home or flexibility for you on your work site. And very importantly, we can help you meet CTR goals. So with that, I am going to pause and now look at questions. Okay, question one, we were jump started into teleworking, and my concern is the effects of working from home full-time has on the setups at home, as well as the stress level. Nicole Fisher, I hope that I've addressed at least some of your concerns about this. And, keep in mind that we've had a lot of time, and we are going to have the next few months definitely to feel better about, how things should work in the office, how things should work at home, so that people aren't, having so much stress in their lives. And why has it taken teleworking decades to become mainstream? Thank you for asking that. Now, as a student of not only, teleworking, but having been a consultant for a very long time, obviously this question of will the work get done if people aren't in front of us has always been one of the #1 barriers. And the good news about the pandemic, not everything's good news, is that some of those answers about productivity are being answered, but by a lot of data across the board. And so I don't think the issue is going to be, will employees be more productive? But now we're looking at, what will be, what should be in a selection criteria? What are some jobs that are ideal for teleworking? And the other part of this is technology is the biggest enabler today. Just look at how far we've gotten in the past year. What are the training services that WorkSmart provides to employers? We actually have not only tips on teleworking successfully for employees and for managers, we have do's and don'ts, but we also can help your organization by providing training. And that could be a training that is recorded, and it's usually PowerPoint based like this is, but really speaks to those two audiences about best practices. Let's see. Are smaller employers reacting differently to teleworking than larger employers? Actually, we're not seeing a lot of big differences. However, with the issue of real estate, obviously, for a smaller employer, it may be an easier route to see the difference. But with smaller firms, you're going to see changes in productivity very quickly because everyone knows everyone, and it's going to, you'll see what jobs are lending themselves to teleworking and which are not. Obviously, the deployment of equipment, technology, all of that may have been more rampant with larger employers, but it has to be with smaller employers as well, because some of the issues that we're facing getting out of the pandemic is how secure were our interactions that we all, jumped into during, during these, the past year or maybe in the past, and for the next, few 6 months. And our approach with smaller employers may only vary because, in terms of WorkSmart, is that we know smaller employers may have a shorter employer manual. So they may want quicker policies, shorter policies, as long as all the check marks are there, in terms of being compliant with the legalities involved. And sometimes larger employers want more rules and want a longer policy. So we have both types, and we can cater to all of that. Please, if you have questions, here's another chance to sharing some questions with us. Don't feel shy. I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to, I think I took my screen sharing off. I hope not. The last slide was information about how to contact me, but you can also provide that information on your survey. That will pop up as soon as we leave the conversation. So any other questions? Not seeing any. I guess we will give you back 6 minutes in your day because we didn't have to spend the whole hour. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will have more webinars from WorkSmart that we will publicize. Have a great day.